We're all familiar with Nicktoons. You know, the original cartoon shows made for Nickelodeon? Can I get some noise in the comments from my fellow 90s kids? The list of shows under this category is just as extensive as it is iconic. You've got your classics like Hey Arnold, Cat Dog, and The Wild Thornberrys, which have spawned several seasons and even a movie or two. The absolute phenomenons, such as the Rugrats and SpongeBob, which seemed to rule the world for a while. The Butch Hartman ones like Fairly OddParents and Danny Phantom. The more adult ones like Rocko's Modern Life and Ren and Stimpy. The ones we love to remember and the ones we try to forget. And honestly, that's not even scratching the surface. There are dozens of shows that make up the channel's cartoon lineup, and I could stay here all day talking about their cultural impact. Nicktoons were the source of a lot of fond memories for people all over the world, and when it comes to their role in defining the channel's identity, I guess you could say they were paramount. I'm sorry. However, when it comes to these beloved series, there is one in particular that I feel is always left to the sidelines, even though it clearly deserves a lot more praise and attention. Well, I'm here to fix this situation, and also to question every single top 10 best Nicktoons list that doesn't add this show at least to their top 5. I wanna talk about As Told by Ginger. As Told by Ginger is a Nicktoon that originally aired between the years of 2000 and 2005 on Nickelodeon, and later had a few reruns on its sister channels. It was created by Emily Kapnick, who even went on to voice a character in the series, and it was made by Classic Supo. You may recognize the company's signature style, known mainly for their work in the Rugrats and the Wild Thornberrys, and their absolute inability to draw the mouth in the correct place. I mean, come on guys, you just gotta put it right there. The show follows our protagonist Ginger Foutley as she deals with the many social situations and dilemmas that come with being a middle schooler, such as popularity, friendship, romance, heartbreak, betrayal, addiction, financial issues, and a largely absent father. You know, just girly things. All jokes aside though, that list of issues is barely an exaggeration. Hidden behind the show's perky subject matter, there are a lot of deeper themes that are tackled with a level of sincerity and nuance that is hard to spot in other cartoons from the same time period, or even nowadays actually. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's explore the basic premise a little more first. Ginger is a middle schooler that lives with her single mother, a nurse called Lois, and her younger brother Carl, who is very fond of the gross and weird. Like every preteen girl, she's bound to find her family a little embarrassing, especially considering how unconventional they are and how different they seem from the families of her classmates. Her best friends are her next-door neighbor Darren, who's known her since they were little, Macy, who lives in a state of perpetual allergies, and Dodie, who is cheerful, loud, and the absolute worst. This main girl trio has the whole friendship thing going pretty well for them, but they still can't help but wish to be a part of the in-crowd, as they aren't exactly the most popular kids in school. This spot seems to be occupied almost exclusively by Courtney Grippling, who's rich enough to make you question why she's still attending public school, and the girl posse that surrounds her, who all seem to bend to her will. Meanwhile, Courtney harbors a special kind of fascination towards Ginger. Even though the two have nothing in common and belong to entirely different social groups, Courtney is always trying to get Ginger to hang out or attend parties together, or overall just share more of her unusual world. Courtney's best friend Miranda, however, fails to understand this obsession and tries to keep Ginger out of the popular crowd just as much as Courtney is trying to lure her in. This is the source of a lot of the storylines from the show, especially from the first season. Courtney feels like a specialist in teen situations, something that Ginger still struggles with. And while she really wants to know more about this world, she also fears that she might have to steer too far off from her true self. Luckily for her, Courtney is more than willing to be her guide, even if she can be a bit of an airhead herself at times. It's funny to watch this series now that I'm older than the main cast. I remember watching it as a kid when I was still in elementary school, so everything Ginger went through felt really distant and magical, but at the same time, very close and terrifying. I felt like it wouldn't be long until I would have to go through the same stuff myself, and I thought all of the characters were so mature and cool. Now that I'm past that phase, however, I see how silly we all were for making such a big deal out of those things, even if they all felt like immeasurable landmarks at the time. And to me, that's part of the brilliance of the show. It manages to strike that perfect balance where you can relate to the characters no matter how old you are. You can see yourself trying to walk in Ginger's shoes within a few years, or remember how it felt to be that age years ago. Aside from that, I feel like the angle that the writing takes is also very clever. Ginger might try to come out of her shell a couple of times, but the series is actually constantly showing us that making yourself uncomfortable in the search for social status is a bad thing, and that staying true to yourself is always the best option, as cliché as it might sound. For example, one episode has Courtney trying to push Ginger towards having her first kiss during a ski trip, which just brings two of Ginger's fears together, kissing and skiing. By the end of the episode, she conquers both of those fears by learning to ski and by not kissing a boy, because she realizes that she can just do the latter whenever she feels truly ready for it. In another episode, Ginger and her friends want to wear makeup when having their school picture taken, so they can get a shot at looking less dorky and more like the popular kids. Ginger's mother forbids it, thinking that the girls are too young for that stuff, but the trio makes their own makeup in secret, which brings really awful results. And they all decide that, really, there isn't much use in trying to look older and cooler because it doesn't really reflect who they are. In trying to degrade Ginger, Miranda often calls her a total wannabe, but Ginger never really tried to be anything other than herself. Her whole character can be summed up by her own quote, as she says,
"I'd rather be nice than popular."
At the end of the day, that's the part of her that always shined through, no matter what new social situations she had to experience. And I just find that to be a really good lesson. We've got the whole school stuff figured out then. Stay true to yourself, popularity isn't always the answer, friendship is worth more than status, and all that. But then we look into Ginger's family life. And then we get into the good stuff. Ginger was mostly raised by her mother Lois, a hardworking nurse with a strong personality. At first, not much is known about her father aside from the fact that he left the family pretty early on, shortly after Ginger's brother was born, and then he stayed gone for most of their lives. In fact, even his absence was barely brought up until episode 7, Hello Stranger. In this episode, Ginger is tasked with writing a poem for a school presentation and gets really excited when she invites her father to come, thinking that he will show up, despite all other characters trying to get her to manage her expectations, since he technically never accepted her invitation, and also because he hadn't been very present in her life thus far. Still, she remains convinced that he will come to see her, and even dedicates her poem to him, and then he never shows up. Her mother, who couldn't be at the presentation for unrelated reasons, sends her flowers in his name, because she knows how much Ginger wants him to be there. But Ginger sees right through it and thanks her mother for the gesture. This episode got nominated for an Emmy Award back in 2001, and you can totally see why. The depth of the relationships between these characters is not something that you watch every day. This feels like a heavy theme for kids programming, but the show has never been afraid of tackling these issues. Ginger's bond with her mother also feels very real. There are moments in which Ginger feels embarrassed by her wacky family, but Lois has always tried her best to be present and supportive, and it works out in her favor. They have an open channel of communication, and Ginger is always welcome to talk about her life and problems, as she is always free to keep her own secrets too. Ginger sometimes worries that her mother might be miserable because she's single, but Lois always makes it very clear that she is happy with the way things are and she likes to take control of her own life. She is not embarrassed by who she is, or by how much money her family has, or by how unconventional the Foutleys can be. And again, I think that's also a great lesson. Lois isn't perfect, but she is a very concerned and loving mother, as well as a very well-written character. If all of this seems too girl-centric for you, don't worry. All of the episodes also have Ginger's brother Carl carrying out his own B-plot along with his best friend Hoodsie, who happens to be Dodie's brother. Joining in on their adventures is Blake, Courtney's brother, who sometimes tries to play along with their schemes while other times acting more like an antagonist, sharing for Carl the same fascination that Courtney shares for the boy's sister. These boy-centric segments have their own charm to them, as the lads talk in a fancy, professor-like manner, as if they were businessmen instead of children, which is a funny contrast by itself, but it's also a nice way to show how seriously you take your childhood adventures when you're living through them. Your backyard projects and playground interactions might as well feel like business transactions. Another neat thing about the series is the continuity. The characters actually grow throughout the course of the show, changing school years, outfits, and hairstyles. Things that happen in episode 1 are still being referenced well into the 3rd season, and you get a sense that nothing is truly gratuitous. Characters are allowed to be impacted by the things that happen in their lives, and they get to learn and grow from it. As Told by Ginger is an outstanding series with compelling characters, relatable storylines, and fantastic writing. When developing the show, it was very important to Emily Kapnick that everything was kept real and authentic. She drew inspiration from her own life experiences and allowed the characters to develop from the things they'd lived through. In the end, we've got a cartoon series that still feels topical even after 20 years of its original release. Oh my god, it's really been 20 years. I feel so old. Ironically enough, Nickelodeon kinda gave the series the same amount of love that Nicktoons fans give it today. The series finale didn't even air officially in the US and was instead confined to DVD collections. The characters are never included in ensemble merchandise. I mean, we're talking about a show with 3 Emmy nominations here. Couldn't we at least spare it a little bit of the spotlight? That's where I come in, I guess. If I have to kickstart an As Told by Ginger revival, then so be it. It is a wonderful series that you will not regret watching. And if somebody could get me that green journal of Ginger's as a piece of merch, I definitely wouldn't complain. Thank you for watching. Well, hello there. It was very nice of you to watch this video. If you have enjoyed the video, you can do those cool things such as clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the notification bell too. You can also follow me on Twitter and share this video with your friends. Feel free to leave a comment down below, especially if it is about how much you love As Told by Ginger. I actually feel like I haven't said everything I needed to say about this show, so if you would like to hear more about it, make sure to let me know in the comments or by leaving a like in the video too. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! Also, Courtney and Ginger were low-key gay.